exceedingly difficult to get one kind to breed with another. You can't get cats to breed with dogs because the DNA molecules don't have the basic fit to one another to enable breeding to take place.
But sometimes something happens in the DNA molecules and chromosomes. An alteration takes place, one which we call a mutation. In 1886, a Dutchman with the name of Hugo de Vries discovers something exciting while collecting wildflowers. He knows the ordinary Anatheria, but here he finds unknown types of the same family. Taking them home and breeding them, he gets completely new types and publishes his results in 1901 and 1903 under the title Die Mutationstheorie. During these same years, the results of Mendel's work drew public attention, but seemed to make Darwin's theory of gradual evolution impossible. Mutations now suddenly became the new magic wand in neo-Darwinism, by which the solid barriers between the different species could be overcome. Now, why does a mutation occur? One of the answers is radiation. Here, for instance, using X-rays, new types of African violets are bred by deliberate mutation. These mutations, prompted by radiation and other causes, can occur both in plants and in animals. But what does a mutation really do, even when they look as pretty as these? Do they really improve the kind or the species? The answer is no. Let's look at one example, the fruit fly. The Dutch genetic biologist, Dr. Willem Oerniel, explains.
Now, what do all these mutants mean? The important question for evolutionists has always been whether it could be shown whether mutations play any role in the supposed evolution. Because the only two mechanisms that are supposedly known for the alleged evolution are mutations and, secondly, natural selection, a process in nature by which these mutations are selected. And favored mutations are heaped up so that we gradually get all kinds of different animals. Now, what is true of this by the solid facts of genetics? Now, the first fact is that we can maintain these nice mutations in the laboratory quite well because we protect them. We are very nice to them and we look after them. But these poor animals would easily die in nature because all these mutations damage them. They are very damaging, harmful to their viability, and often they are simply directly lethal. So mutations are harmful. They are very interesting to us. They are very useful to us because by these mutations we can study a lot of the genetic laws in animals, but they are very unuseful and very harmful to the animals.
Mutations in nature actually damage and weaken the species. In our day of atomic bombs and nuclear plants, we are understandably afraid of radiation and the bizarre malforming mutations that can be its result. But can natural selection help by favoring small positive mutations and helping them to develop into new and stronger species?
Now, what does natural selection really do? Let's take some examples. Say you have an organism which undergoes a certain number of mutations, and 95% of these mutations are negative. That is, they're a hindrance to the organism. Natural selection will certainly cut out those organisms in the course of time which are less suited to their environment. If a man gets diabetes by losing some information in his genes, even by mutation, then he will be less able to compete with other people who are healthy. and the same applies right throughout the animal kingdom. So it certainly does prevent the strain or the species or the kind from deteriorating. It destabilizes from going downhill. Now, let's look at the other side. Say you do get an organism which has a mutation, 1%, 2%, above the average, so that it has an advantage. Now, if an organism has some sort of an advantage, say it starts to develop an eye, say a worm starts to develop an eye. That is, an earthworm doesn't have an eye, of course, it just has a black spot. But if that worm starts to develop, say, a retina and all these sorts of things, then that half-finished new organism, which is coming out from a positive mutation, will be, until it's perfect, a hindrance. So natural selection and mutation, what they will do together is prevent the drift downwards of a species. But they will certainly never take care that a species starts to drift upwards, because the natural selection will take care that better earthworms, say, are produced, but not earthworms that are half other animals, say half snakes or half amphibians or anything like that, because they would have a disadvantage according to Darwin's own theory.
Darwin thought natural selection, the struggle for life and the survival of the fittest, would cause a slow but irresistible evolution from one species into the other. From dead matter to primitive forms of life. From primitive forms of life to complicated ones. From algae and amoebas all the way up to primates and man. But Darwin was definitely wrong. Natural selection itself prevents this.
The whole theory is dependent upon the idea that you won't get, by chance, a complete new organ produced at once, a macro mutation. But you will get small changes. Now, those small changes, up to something better, will be a disadvantage to the species until they are complete. And as they never are complete, your natural selection prevents the drift upwards just as effectively as it prevents the drift downwards. And that being the case, we can account for the fact that species, humans, animals and plants, have remained constant through all these years by this feedback mechanism which Darwin rightly produced. What he didn't say is that it would prevent a drift, a slow drift upwards, just as effectively as it will prevent a slow drift downwards.
And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after its kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after its kind." And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after its kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after its kind.
When the Bible says that God made the animals and man and the plants after their kind, to breed after their kind, we've come up against an absolutely basic scientific truth, which is today just as true as when Moses wrote it down. So God did make the interbreeding pools of genes constant. You can vary within them, but you can't go outside the frontiers of that pool of interbreeding genes. You can vary within it, but not without it. Just like a piece of music from Mozart by point mutations, point changes, can't be changed into a Bach fugue or can't be changed into a sonata of Mozart. They remain constant. And this is just what the Bible says about the species and kinds which God made. The laws which we found out stabilize them within their own frontiers perfectly rigidly.
So we see that the laws and discoveries of genetics provide strong support for creation. It is also important to note that the fossils agree with these findings. In fact, Darwin called the fossil evidence perhaps the most serious objection to the theory of evolution. Dr. Gary Parker is one of a number of former ardent evolutionists who have changed their minds and become convinced creationists after deeper study of these matters.
In most people's minds, fossils and evolution go hand in hand. In reality, fossils are a great embarrassment to evolutionary theory and offer strong support for the concept of creation. If evolution were true, we should find literally millions of fossils that show how one kind of life slowly and gradually changed into another kind of life. But missing links are the trade secret, in a sense, of paleontology. The point is, the links are still missing. What we really do find are gaps that sharpen up the boundaries between kind. It's those gaps that provide us with the evidence of creation of separate kinds. As a matter of fact, there are gaps between each of the major kinds of plants and animals. Transition forms are missing in their millions. What we do find are separate and complex kinds pointing to creation.
At the end of his life, Darwin was still full of doubts and frustrated by his own theories, still wondering about the big questions of life. And so he died, finally to meet his Creator, the one who said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven." And God created great whales, and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after its kind. And God saw that it was good.